viewpoints on that policing the cyberspace. So if you permit me, I'll allow you have the floor.
Okay. So thank you very much, Patrick, and good evening, everyone from Lagos. We're joining you live from Lagos. The last episode we had, we talked about policing, which is law enforcement. And that is something that is very crucial and important when we talk about cyber criminality. But unfortunately, the virtual space, it's a space that has no jurisdiction, if you know. It has no national boundary. It is an unlimited space. So the implication of that is that whereas the orthodox policing system we have today in the world looks at policing and enforcement through the prism of jurisdictions. So if, for instance, you're dealing with the New York police, of course, the New York police will police crimes within the precincts of New York City. And of course, you know the way the policing in America goes is a federal system of policing. So which means that each state has its own police force, apart from the FBI, which is the federal police, that is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And of course, the CIA that works outside the jurisdiction of the United States of America. And this is the kind of thing you find in most countries of the world. In Nigeria, for instance, on paper, we have a federal system of policing because we run a federal system of government. But in reality, what we have is a unitary system of policing, in the sense that we have a structure that has the police force concentrated at the federal level. So you have the Inspector General of Police, sitting in Abuja at Edith House, where he calls the shot from. And then you have, because at a time we discovered that this was becoming very difficult to police the entire 36 states of the Federation. So what the federal government did was to now use the structure, which was bequeathed to us by the late head of state, General Sani Abacha. If you recall that he divided the country into 6 geopolitical zones. So today we have AIGs in each of the political zones. And when you go to other countries, you have that their criminal justice system is also different. So how, for instance, do you police a space, for instance, that has no jurisdiction? It has a limitless boundary. It becomes a problem. Why? Because the interesting thing about cyber criminality is that it's global. So like this afternoon, I was reading about the last crime committed by Hush Puppy. If you recall Hush Puppy, Ramon Abbas.
Yes.
Who is waiting for sentencing at the moment. You find that even though he was domiciled in Dubai, that is United Arab Emirates, but he had all his members of his syndicates, scattered all over the world. Some of them were living in the UK, some were living in India, some of them were living in America. And then funny enough, some of them were even living in Mexico, which is Latin America. So, and there was a particular case, for instance, which they wanted to commit. And, I read it and I found it so exciting and interesting. It shows you the mindset of this group of people, how they operate. I don't know whether you recall when they wanted to transfer a huge sum of money from the Premier League to Mexico. But somehow the bankers in the UK were very smart, okay? They didn't press the button because this is, for each technology that is introduced into the world, that is the interesting thing about cyber criminality. As the world evolves into AI, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, okay? And then information technology. Each one that comes, that makes life very easy for you and I. It also makes it easy for the criminal. Because the implication of this is that the criminal will sit in the confines of his own sitting room, just as I'm sitting in my own sitting room now, and just with the touch of a button, he can transfer billions and billions of dollars. If the person at the other end is not smart enough to realize that this could not be, it has happened severally. If you recall the last episode we had, the crime about the currencies, the cryptocurrencies, in less than 30 minutes, you saw the amount of money that was moved out, okay? And if you read so many, I don't know whether you follow them the way I do, because for me, I don't see them as a profession anymore. I see it like a hobby, something I enjoy. Like yesterday, I was reading about somebody, I will not mention his name. You know, this person used to be a banker, a director in one of the banks in Nigeria. But somehow he sat in Lagos and succeeded in selling an airport to a bank in Brazil. I mean, that was one of the greatest. It has qualified as one of the greatest scams in the world. I'm sure right now it will be in the Guinness Book of Records, even though eventually he was arrested and he did some stints in jail. But the truth is that this guy sits down and is an interconnected thing. Cyber criminality is a global crime. So you cannot say, okay, I want to police the people in America. The people in America might be working with people in, as innocuous as it might sound, maybe the people in Benin Republic, that is a small country, because that is the new trend. You find a lot of young people migrating to some of these smaller countries, and you begin to wonder, what are they going to those countries to do? Those countries do not have enough resources, for instance, to offer them, you know, a livelihood in terms of, say, business or profession or education. So it tells you that they are going into those countries because those countries offer them the anonymity they desire to enable them to plan their crimes and then to carry out their criminal activities. And that's why policing it becomes difficult. So how do we do it? Because that was the question you asked me. Now, yes, in today's world, policing cannot be something that is jurisdictional if you're talking about cyber criminality. Policing has to be global. It has to be globalized. It has to be an architecture that will bring together the policing of different nations in terms of what? Sharing of intelligence. You cannot ask the FBI, for instance, to come into Lagos and police Lagos. But the FBI can have an understanding with the Nigerian police force. And that is something that has been happening. If you discover now that the EFCC in Nigeria, for instance, has been arresting a lot of some of these Yahoo boys and the Yahoo Plus. And oftentimes, they are not acting on their own. They are acting on shared intelligence. And that's what makes it interesting. If the world is now operating on the basis of technology, it means that we might also make use of that technology in order to catch up with criminals. And how do you do that? For people who are living in America and Europe, it's easier for them. For instance, I know that most Western countries have this, you know, I don't know whether to call it interconnection as far as the sharing of intelligence is concerned. For instance, FBI can share intelligence with Mossad. They can also share intelligence with the KGB, okay? They can also share intelligence with MI6, okay? But in West Africa, and that is something I've advocating for the past 10 years, okay? In fact, I started this advocacy in 2010, a year after I got my doctorate. I kept telling them that the 15 countries in ECOWAS, we cannot, avoid a situation where we should share intelligence. It is something that has to be done. Why? Because the world has become a village. I can stay here and then oftentimes I have meetings with my colleagues in French-speaking countries, okay? I have colleagues who are in Ouagadougou. I have colleagues who are in, okay, I need to admit somebody, okay? I've forgotten that, yeah. I have colleagues who are in Ouagadougou who are Francophone speaking. And often we have meetings together. Now, if I'm having meetings with people in Ouagadougou, the implication is that I'm also vulnerable because my vulnerability is such that if, for instance, the meetings I'm having with them has to do with resources, it means that I'm exposed. Therefore, it augurs well for the Nigerian police force to have a kind of synergy and global understanding with the country of the French-speaking, states in West Africa. And that is the only way we can do this. If you come to West Africa, for instance, I mean, I don't know the last time you visited, but if you've done the kind of journeys I've done across West Africa, you find that there's virtually no state in the 15 ECOWAS countries where you don't have a veritable presence of Nigerians. There is no country in West Africa today where you can now say that this country is homogeneous. No. If you come to Benin Republic, the last interview I had with the Nigerian ambassador to Benin Republic, He told me that there are 3 million Nigerians living in Cotonou alone, not to talk of people who are living in Calavi, okay? And people who are living in other parts of Cotonou. Now, all these people living in these spaces, some of them are students, but many of them are not students. Many of them are what? Many of them are traders. Many of them are businessmen. And come to think of them, many of them are also criminals and potential criminals. Many of them are people who actually thought maybe that Lagos is becoming very hot for them. And for them to be able to operate as far as cyber criminality is concerned, they need a country where the criminal justice system is not as sophisticated or efficient as you might have in other climes. And some of these smaller countries in West Africa offers them that anonymity they crave. Another country in Europe also, which is tending towards that, if they are not careful, is Malta. You find a number of people trying to migrate to Malta. And then you begin to ask yourself, all these people who are going to Malta, for instance, what are they going there to do? And if you ask many of them, you find that many of them are not going there because they want to have a PhD or they want to further their studies. They are going there because they believe that these places are more or less like safe havens, just like we used to have in the Caribbean, where people sit and nobody bothers about them, so long as they don't breach any of the laws in those countries. They can sit in the confines of their living rooms and they can do whatever business they want to do. So the world is tilting towards that. And if the world actually wants to have a social order, especially in this 21st century, where cyber criminality will be reduced to the barest minimum, then it augurs well for the police forces of the world to come together, bury their differences. Oftentimes, the major challenge is language for us in West Africa. You know, we have this dichotomy, the French-speaking countries, Francophone countries, and then the Anglophone countries. But if you want to do a thorough policing, a robust policing that will enable you, for instance, to have a hands-on as far as information sharing, intelligence sharing is concerned, you must be able to have this interconnectivity as far as the sharing of intelligence is concerned. It means that if I sit in my office in Alagbo, in Ikoyi, I can press a button and the police officer who is in Ouagadougou can share whatever information he has with me. Why? Because the borders have become porous. You cannot even police the borders anymore because there are multiplicity of routes through which people move into these borders. And who are the people moving? The research we are carrying out at the moment on migration along the West African corridors has shown that it is people between the ages of 15 and 40. And where are they moving to? They are not moving to Europe. That is the funniest aspect of it. You know, Europe used to believe that everybody was moving to their space. Now, statistics have shown that, in fact, we have more movements within Africa than across from the south to the north. If you even visit the IOM, you will see the latest because they also have anecdotal statistics. These are empirical studies we've carried out. The last one, which we did, which we're about to publish, was a comparison of migration between Lagos and Ouagadougou. And it will amaze you. The presence of Nigerians who are living in a space that is not English speaking. Burkina Faso. We have large communities of Nigerians, Yoruba speaking, Hausa speaking in another city called Bobo Dialasso. In fact, you will be amazed the number of people who came from Nigeria. The same thing you come to Benin Republic today. Almost all the bureau de change in Cotonou are being operated by people from the Southwest. You go to Ghana, you find the same thing, okay? You go to Côte d'Ivoire, that one is even funny because from a space in Osun State, a town called Ejibo, there is a direct transportation from that town to Abidjan. Then you go to Yamoussoukro, you find a huge presence of Igbo-speaking people. So these are the things, you know, if, for instance, the states, the presidents or heads of states in many countries in the world, if they can come together and understand the dynamics of cyber criminality, then it will be very easy for us, for instance, to talk about policing these spaces. Because you cannot sit down and then you say, okay, I want to go to UAE. Remember the way the FBI arrested a hush puppy? They had to work with
Rahman.
Yes, Ramon Abbas. They had to work with the police of the United Arab Emirates. So you cannot go into somebody's space, for instance, to say you want to make an arrest. So there must be that synergy. There must be that cooperation. And this cooperation for me must go beyond Interpol, okay? is something that must go beyond Interpol, because it has become a sophisticated crime where you find most young people. In fact, the last arrest that was made in Abuja, they were young men between the ages of 17 and 21. What were they doing? They were learning how to do Yahoo. So it's become a vocation, a trade, where you find young men who have left secondary school or who have left the polytechnic, at the ND level, believing that the best profession for them to do is to either become Yahoo boys or Yahoo plus. And what
Doctor,
yes,
I have a quick question. I'm so sorry I have to interject at this point, because from the conversation, you've mentioned a couple of terminologies that I think some of the audience might not actually have knowledge of what it means. For example, you talked about artificial intelligence, that's the AI,
yes.
Then the architectural structuring, then the common one, state policing. State police, I think I have a question in that regard.
Please do.
Because coming to state policing, let's use Nigeria case study. There has been advocacy for the government to create or enact a legislation which the president should sign into law to allow state police take control. Just like, let me use America, for example. Part of the fundamental responsibilities of a state, not the federal government. The US federal government protects the integrity of the entire country. But the states are mandated to give education and give security. And when you talk about security, you are talking about state policing. Now, the states have further gone down to decentralize their own policing structure, so that we have county police, we have city police, even institutions like the Georgia Tech and the other local community schools. They have their own structure that are actually recognized by law.
Am I losing you, Patrick? Patrick, am I losing you? Hello, Patrick. Am I losing you, Patrick?
Yeah, I said somebody called my phone and disconnected my my platform.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but when we come back to the structure over here, because of the centralized police system, they are centralized, but that does not mean that they are not interjected or working together. If a very terrible crime occurs right now in Cobb County, which is the county in Georgia, if it's something that pertains, that concerns the FBI, even the FBI will be called to sing. That is the form of strategy.
That was exactly what I was saying. Dr. Gozem is raising up his hand, so let me just finish so that we can take him. Now, when I teach policing in class at the graduate level, one of the paradigms or the models I use in teaching policing is the decentralized system of policing. In fact, I picked the American model of policing, despite the fact that policing did not come from America. Policing emanated from the Metropolitan Police, if you could recall your delinquency and crime class. It's something that originated from the UK. But you see, the American system has taken it a step further by decentralizing this. And the essence of decentralization is to bring policing, to the common person at the lowest rung of the society. And that is why you find, no matter the crime you commit in America, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how sophisticated, eventually the person will be caught. But in our own system, we borrowed the presidential system of government, which ideally should be a decentralized system of government where the states ought to be autonomous for them to have their own policing. But rather than do that, what we've succeeded in doing is to impose the military structure on police. Because you see, this started in the First Republic. If you could still recall your political sociology, which Dr. Agugwa taught you. In the First Republic, if you recall that the Eastern region has its own police, the Northern region has its own police, and then the Western region has its own police. So this military system of policing came when the military took over the reins of power from the civilians. And for me, it is an aberration. It is something we need to correct if we actually need to reduce crime to the barest minimum. Patrick, are you still there?
I'm here, Doctor.
Yes, it's just that we're not seeing it. So you can take Dr. Oboziam Attoh. He's been raising his hand, so I think he wants to ask a question.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Good afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting, and very great information, especially about the Nigerian migrants in different countries in West Africa. This is big information, to me. Thank you very much. Now, with this cyber intelligence, my question is, these so-called third world countries or developing countries, the ideas you have put up so far sounds very interesting, but how feasible these so-called third world countries or developing countries, how strong are they to financially set up platforms, for disseminating information on intelligence, financial resources. So a country like Burkina Faso, even Nigeria, so to speak, how financially strong are those countries to set up? They are not like America or Britain or France. That's they can fund anything that to protect their citizens or their country. But these countries, they have more to think about than to spend millions of money on setting up cyber technology space, to join with other countries. How feasible is it?
Okay, sir, I'll answer you. You see, the truth of the matter is that if countries run away from this, yes, these countries are very poor, especially one of the countries you mentioned, Nigeria can afford most of these things, if they have the political will. The truth is that Nigeria has enormous resources, but huge leakages. Nigeria is not a poor country at all.
I know that.
By whatever ramifications.
I know that.
Yes, Nigeria has huge resources. Now, if Nigeria should plug its leakages, Nigeria should be able to even fund some of the countries in West Africa. Now, but you see, the beauty of having a globalized criminal justice system, the problem we are having today, policing the virtual world, is the fact that there's no homogeneity. That is, there's no uniformity. So countries do whatever they like, and it becomes a problem. So I can stay in India and commit a crime. It will shock you, sir, that you have more Nigerians living in India than, if you're not careful, than people living in Asaba. More Nigerian young men living in Delhi, for instance. And then the question you ask yourself, why would a Nigerian travel that distance? What are they doing in India? And once these people enter these spaces, they operate at a very sophisticated level. It's not only the issue of cyber criminality. They set up alternative spaces of doing things. For instance, you can be in India, and if you want to send money home, you can send money home without going through the banking system. In fact, that is one of the greatest shocks I've had in the course of my travels, that you can visit a country and then do your own banking transaction without stepping your feet into any of the banking halls. Why? Because people have set up alternatives in those spaces. So if America, for instance, wants to be safe, America must cough out some money, whether it likes it or not. The UK must cough out some money. The UK could tell you anyway, we are very meticulous, we are finicky when it comes to some of these things. And that's why you find that they are not suffering as much as America is suffering. When it comes to cyber criminality, America is bleeding. America is bleeding because everybody targets them. Yes, America is bleeding. Yes, America is bleeding. If you find all these young boys who are into this Yahoo plus, all the targets are, old women, widows in America. And so yes, they target some English women at times, but they don't get as much as possible. Why? Because America is very wealthy. Those people can afford some of these things. I mean, there are countries you will send a scam mail to a woman, for instance. You might not be able to get $20 because the woman doesn't have up to $100 in her account. But for some of the things I read, you find, like this afternoon, somebody was saying that, in fact, the person is a professional, incidentally, but he's very ashamed. He believes he's one of the people who was a victim of hush puppy, and he lost over $500,000. Because of his standing in the society, he's very ashamed to come forward, to say that he lost that kind of money. Because you see, given his level of education and the status he holds in society, people will begin to question his credibility as far as intelligence is concerned. So, and that is why countries as rich as that has so much to lose, must come together. Just like the question you ask yourself, who funds the United Nations, for instance? America contributes more than most countries in the world. Yes, they do that because they want the world to have peace and harmony. They want to have a global, information space, and a space where they can do their trading, in peace and harmony. Now, look at what is happening in Ukraine, for instance. If they are able to stop what is happening in Ukraine, it then means that the little money they could use for other things eventually could be put into the rebuilding of Ukraine. And that is why those rich countries, like I was telling a group I had a meeting with yesterday, I said the lucky 1% in the world must look out for the unlucky 99% in the world. Incidentally, America falls into the lucky 1% in the world. Therefore, the burden of looking after the unlucky 99% in the world falls on their shoulders, and they cannot shift this responsibility. It's something they must have to do, one way or the other, if they want to go to sleep with their two eyes shut.
I don't know how the taxpayer, if they bring this in any election year, I don't know how the taxpayer will take this, for the Americans to fund, these developing countries with such amount of money, because eventually it falls on the shoulder of the taxpayer.
Yes, but anyway, does. Okay, let me shock you, sir. All the researches I've carried out in the past 3 years have been funded by the German taxpayer.
Yes.
Okay, and these researches I'm carrying out, these especially on migration issues.
Yes.
Now, Germany is looking at, the volume of migratory wave they're having, and they are beginning to think, if we don't have a solution to this, what happens to our country in the next 20 years? And the taxpayer is saying, okay, let's put some money into research so that we can find out why are these things happening, okay? But luckily for us, going to the field, we found that now most people are not even going to those countries anymore. They are remaining in West Africa, and some of them are moving to East Africa, Southern Africa before, but when the xenophobia started, many of them came back because of xenophobia. So you find a number of people moving to East Africa, but mainly West Africans are beginning to remain in West Africa. So that you see why we do this, and that's the essence of research. If America sits now and said, okay, we are losing so billion every year to cyber criminality. Now, what will it cost us if we put a fraction of what we are losing, for instance, into the setting up of intra-connectivity? At the end of the day, it comes to nothing. I mean, these are things we've seen. It comes to nothing. For instance, the UNODC that is, responsible for some of these meetings we're having, that is what gave impetus to it. The fact that crime has become something that is global. How do we come in to stem the tide of crime so that countries may continue to thrive and then carry out developments, to be able to take care of their citizenry?
Yeah, they have to convince the taxpayer, because everything, they put it like in election time now. These are the things they bring out, they bring forward. They have to convince the taxpayer for the government to carry this out.
If somebody has been a victim of hush puppy, I'm sure anybody who has been his victim will prefer to pay $100 as tax rather than have a repeat. Yeah, because I'm just happy that the FBI decided to work with other countries. If the FBI, for instance, didn't work with other countries, they wouldn't have been able to catch him. You understand? It would have been impossible. They wouldn't be able to catch him. Then he would have been getting more victims. And in fact, the one they targeted, if they had succeeded in carrying out that one, it would have been a real disaster for the world because that would have affected more people. But unfortunately, before they were able to carry out that one, he was arrested. And the good thing about arresting, arrowheads like this is that when you debrief them, they might give you an inkling into the psychology of the criminal, okay? And how they think and who their members are, where they are domiciled. So that's the essence of this coming together. You can call it a globalization, okay? We've experimented on it severally. Patrick, if you remember ECOMOG, okay?
I do.
ECOMOG, if you remember, yes. I mean, without ECOMOG, Liberia will still be at war today. Sierra Leone will still be at war. And Nigeria funded ECOMOG almost 80%. Why? Because Nigeria was the loser if Liberia and Sierra Leone were not at peace. 85% of the refugees from those countries were being brought to Nigeria. So it was better for us to take a fraction of our GDP to invest in ECOMOG to ensure that those countries have peace, for our own citizenry to also have peace. Your next question.
This meeting is actually scheduled for 30 minutes. This is quite
Oh, we've overstayed our welcome.
I really no, but it's okay. Just like I told you then at the initial meeting we had in New York, the UN, we have their consent to make this a continuum. So, and every single deliberations is going to be transmitted to them. The only difference with this is that this is now going to be uploaded on the Secureaidtv page.
And
the channel. So it's something that the general public will have access to watch and watch over again.